You're listening to the Money Shift Podcast, a podcast that helps you downshift on bad financial habits and change gears to smarter strategies. We're talking about more than just debits and credits. We're paving the fast lane to financial freedom. Here's your host, Jack Paglow.
Welcome back to the Money Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Paglow. I'm here with Eric Jorn from Kaizen CPAs, and today we're going to be talking about a not so much controversial topic, but a very, very interesting, very big topic for, on the minds of any shop owner is when to be adding that second shop location, or maybe third or fourth or so on. But, thinking really more about the theoretical, approach to when is the right time, but also, how do I know that I'm, mentally in a good spot, the business is in a good spot. There's a lot to unpack in really exploring this topic beyond just, the dollars and cents of accounting. So if you're tuning in and you're wondering, is this my time to grow, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, we hope this can help you. So we're going to talk about the signs your shop is truly ready, some hidden challenges maybe from multi-location, some things that, maybe aren't thought about right off the cusp, and you should be thinking about them, sooner rather than later in that journey. But also some red flags and maybe a little bit of a roadmap to help you navigate some of these things that come up. So, Eric, I know there's a lot to get into on this one, but first and foremost, a second location is more than just copy paste and take over those processes, that sales, all of those things that are going right in location one. It's never as simple as just copy paste and now we have a successful location two. So I think maybe we dive into a couple of signs that your location is truly ready. First, right off the rip, I would say you're at capacity. You're having a ton of people come in your door. You're booking multiple weeks out. But what's on your mind there as far as, some signs your location is ready to go for that jump to the second shop?
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's start with why would we want to even do this, right? I mean, we can make more revenue, great, more revenue, more profit. Exciting, right? We all want to do that. But there are there's a lot of things that happen in that time frame that does cause you to say, hey, I think it's time. Number one thing I could think of, I've just physically ran out of space, right? I don't have the real estate available to add more bays, add more technicians, and work on more cars. And I think that's generally a good characteristic of saying, hey, it might be a good time to open shop number two. Maybe I want to enter a different market, right? Maybe there's a booming area that's within your ecosystem. Maybe you're in, say, a Denver market, and there's a suburb in Denver that you think is has the right clientele for you, and you want to get into that market. Well, opening a shop there be a great way to tap into the market. We all know locality and SEO, that plays a huge role in it. Third item, hey, I want to gain access to a specialty. I've targeted a transmission shop, maybe I want to beef up my Euro work, so a Euro shop, a diesel shop, whatever it may be. I want to tap into a knowledge base and resource that it would be really hard to organically build inside my current shop or my current organization. This is an interesting one because sometimes great opportunities just fall right on your lap, right? And a contact of yours runs a great shop. He's ready to exit. Could be, hey, this shop is in the right location. The owner stunk, but I know I can flip this thing into a real winner. And we get it for a crazy good discount. And then finally, is it part of my overall growth plan? I talk to lots of shop owners and they say, hey, I might want to acquire 1, 2, 3, 4 shops a year. You're going to be busy doing those things if it's part of your growth plan. So those are all reasons why I could see somebody saying, hey, let's get that new location in place.
It's, as you were talking, one of the things that was kind of going on in the back of my head was really, it's probably a little bit of a mix of all of these things for more often than not for a shop owner. You're probably running your business day to day, and maybe you're subletting out, like you said, a lot of transmission work, and then you realize you're looking at your P&L statement, and my sublet expense to transmission work is crazy high, and that'd be nice to bring that in house. And maybe that just so happens to coincide with that person you're subletting, or maybe a transmission repair shop down the street looking to, close their doors and retire, or, maybe move locations themselves, or whatever that may be. There's an opportunity that kind of falls into your lap that happens to coincide with some of the work you're doing. That's really where there's that kind of business opportunity comes knocking at your door versus you will go searching that out. But at the same time, there's a million and one different ways to, want to enter another market or acquire that second location. I think specifically on the specialty side of things, that almost comes with even more of a can of worms than just copy pasting, a proven recipe at another location, like you were saying, to gain access to a different market, or even just running out of space. You kind of already have, in theory anyway, we want to hope that you already have some pretty proven processes that, you can carry over, a recognizable name that can carry over, some things like that you've already worked hard to establish. And that's what makes that entering a different market a little bit easier versus having to, learn a whole nother way a transmission shop might operate, or an engine specialty shop might operate, or, I'm known for Toyotas, but I want to get into the Euro markets. And, now it's a different clientele and a different, set of vendors and all these other little things that might not seem overcomable, certainly, but add a lot to the number of things you have to think about in making this switch. And I think that's where, in thinking about how you're preparing for that shift from one shop to two shops, it's important. And thinking about the red flags and maybe some of the reasons to not do this, it's important to think about those things. But, I think there are other signs too that say, hey, I'm in a good spot business-wise to make that jump. Maybe I'm not going to have all of these things figured out, but for the most part, my business is in a good spot to start looking at this. I think about, really the shop running without you. And it's an easy one to say off the cuff and say, oh yeah, you shouldn't have to be working in your business. You should only be working on your business. And this is where that really comes into play. But at the same time, that's an easy one to answer. Are you still in your shop day in and day out? Chances are, maybe you're forcing this opportunity if you're looking at that second shop acquisition currently, or, even having, just predictable cash flow. If you're maybe the person that gets a little bit distracted by, some new opportunities, and one of those opportunities, like you mentioned, did fall in your lap, but maybe, the finances really aren't there to justify this acquisition yet. It's easy to want to force a square peg in a round hole, but at the same time, there's a few different things that usually are, I would say, more theoretical in, approach to, is this the right time for me? But when you actually get down to brass tacks, it's a pretty simple yes or no answer that your gut knows. And, usually those are the things that are ignored. So, from a psychological perspective, I think there's a lot that goes into this too. But, that being said, from your perspective, because you've done this, several times now, certainly there's always acquisitions or potential acquisitions going on with our clients. So other than maybe not having some of those cash reserves, or not having a good handle on the type of business you are looking to acquire, what are some of the red flags or maybe pitfalls that you've seen, shops fall into in the past?
Yeah. I mean, early on, I worked with an owner who had just opened a second location, and he just did it. It was a good opportunity. He was not ready. He was not ready at all. He was still jumping in, writing service. I'm the best service writer. I can get the best deal on parts. That's a really good, that's a good start for a red flag. You're still jumping in on the details on the day to day. The shop still revolves around you. That's the number one thing that happens. And it's just, the minute you walk away from that shop and you go tend to the other location, now you're dealing with twice the issue, right? You're doing the same thing your system is me. And my system is, I can't be, where it breaks, that system breaks is I can't be in two locations at once. So every time I leave one location, the other one falters while the other one improves. That's not a recipe for success. And I've seen that actually take down a really good shop before, where they've taken away their good people, their good attention from a shop that's doing really well to tend to a new location that they got before they were ready, before they had the people, processes, and systems in place to make that successful. Number two is cash flow. It's so important. we've seen acquisitions bankrupt businesses before. Does it model out, right? And you have to think about, do I have what are my scenario planning, or what are my scenarios around what this acquisition looks like? It's really hard to get in there and start making money on day one. Have we said, hey, here's my pessimistic and here's my optimistic forecast on what this looks like from a cash flow perspective? I have to put a lot of cash down. Is that going to dry up a lot of my cash reserves? Have I even forecasted out, right, the amount of cash that I need to even infuse into this deal to make it up and running from the get-go? I might have $300,000 in the bank. Sounds like a lot of money. But next thing you know, we're buying this shop for $500K. There's $50K down. I got to put on an SBA note, 10% of the note value. I might have to go in and put another $50K into the shop. There's all the miscellaneous fees and costs that goes around with it. Next thing you know, oh yeah, and now I got to split the amount of capital that I have to have in my bank into two. So we have two sets of working capital we have to maintain. And my working capital for shop A is $100K. My shop B is $100K. I had to put $50K down. I had to put $50K in improvements. I got $30K in fees and other costs associated with selling it. Well, there's going to be a shortfall of cash somewhere right there from the get-go.
I think from a macroeconomic, we can start throwing out our $10 accounting words now. But from a macroeconomic perspective, most people start to approach the acquisition and second shop and third shop location ideas when times are good. Cash is coming in, sales are coming in, cars are going out the door, money's flowing down to the bottom line via net income, and I'm feeling great about where things are at. You know what? Let's now open that second shop. But to your point about the cash reserves, we see both sides of it right now. We're in probably a little bit more than a little bit of a downturn in performance-wise compared to maybe the prior year and how things have been in the auto repair world. And seeing that turn down, are your cash flows really prepared to handle that turn down? Or are you banking on the good times continuing, and that's going to justify this second location? Because at the end of the day, obviously these macroeconomic trends are cyclical, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And chances are, by the time you actually get around to the acquisition, we could be entering at least a little bit of a down cycle, and you need to be prepared to cover your cash reserves with the down cycle, not when the times are good and people are doing the math when the time is good. And, it's probably sounds a little bit simplistic, but at the end of the day, I think it kind of goes back to really making sure you're prepared from a cash flow perspective. And I only say that because we're seeing it right now with, some of our shops that do have multiple locations. They're scraping by, barely having net income after 5 or 6 months in the year. And we're seeing shops that are smaller, maybe just a couple of bays, and have super tight, processes that are, 3 or 4 times profitable, and they're doing a quarter of the work. And obviously that's just, a facet of having that kind of exponential, levels of growth that are levels of processes that are required in making this transition. Because like you said, it's not just, I can now do this same thing and I'm, have to split my time between both locations. Because chances are, if you didn't have your processes and these other things dialed in before you added that second location, you now have to split your time between those and then still get everything else working to be effective across both locations. So there's so many more things to bite off when you're making that leap. And again, none of this is to say don't do it, but it's just to say there's so many different factors that go into what makes this a good decision or not a good decision, and really preparing to jump before you jump. And it's real easy to want to jump off the cliff and figure out how to assemble the plane on the way down, and that sounds great when things are going well. But it's just that reminder of, things don't go well forever. And we also, as the accountants, need to be prepared for, maybe a not so hot day or two.
Yeah. Let's take a learning lesson from the last several years. I'm seeing this rampant throughout just the markets in general. We had really cheap lending going in from 2020 through, even pre-2020, but let's just say from 2020 through about 2023-ish. We're getting low interest rates. And a lot of this debt acquisition was done at using variable interest rates. So what might have modeled out fine at a 3, 4, maybe even 5% interest rate now all of a sudden is debilitating at a 6, 7, 8% interest rate. It's an important thing to think about, even something as simple as that, right? On a large acquisition, and we've seen some really large, especially when it comes to real estate, and that's where we're seeing that a little bit more frequently is on some of those real estate deals where we're doing a $2-3 million real estate purchase. Well, you can do a little bit of math on $2 million, an extra 3% of interest rate. That's $60,000 a year. That is a whole lot of extra cash that you gotta push out there, especially if you're doing a tight acquisition from a cash flow forecast standpoint, or it takes you 3 to 5 years to really turn that thing into a cash cow. Or if you're servicing debt on real estate, servicing debt on the business acquisition, that's a tough crunch. That kind of goes back to, hey, I got to have the strong cash flows in location one. If I'm buying location two to improve cash flow for location one, that's already an issue. That's something that's a red flag. That if you ask me that, if that's your reason, I'm going to say I think you should not do that. We got to fix location one, or you got to close that down and move it. That's how I feel. I'm pretty mad at the fact I like things simple. I like things streamlined, and I'm not going to do something more complex to fix a problem that could be solved more simply. But key is you got to be ready. You got to have all those things in place.
I think the other thing, and kind of thinking about getting a lot of different things in place, but one of the things that's so hard for so many shops right now to get in place is their staff. It's not even, how many shops do we see that are struggling to get work out the door, not because the work isn't there, but because hiring and retaining good help, good qualified, techs, good qualified service advisors is a challenge. And, that's something to consider too. And thinking about, is your leadership, do you have people in your shop that can get promoted to the general manager, to the service manager, to these other positions that need to get built out to establish that second or third location? And there's a cost to that too that often gets talked about, but you have the cost to just pay the people what they need and add more people to the payroll to service, the different processes that need to get completed. But at the same time, are they actually the right people? Like you want to have leaders in those positions to be able to build around and grow the organization and the culture in the organization. And that's all well and good, but right now it's hard finding even people to get, work out the door for one location sometimes. So back to really building that bench, I think it becomes even more important now. And that's another one of those things to make sure you're prepared upon before you make that jump is, you need to have certainly the cash flow that goes along with having a bench, but also, a well-qualified group of employees that are looking to make that move with you and are capable of doing that. And that's, certainly you can go out and find those people, but you're going to have to pay a premium to retain the top talent, or you're going to have to really train them on your own. And that takes time. And again, it's an.
Would you just give up a whole bunch of, if you're acquiring a new location? Time. And
I think maybe that's a good way to start to bring this to an end is in thinking about, is this decision right for me and right for my shop? Is the exponential increase in time that's going to take worth it? We can talk about the dollars and cents. We can talk about, what if I get another location and, now I get an additional, 10% net on, or 12% net on $1.5 million. That's awesome. And I get to, but it's real easy to do that quick math and say, I should open up a second shop. And then it's real easy to then maybe miss, or not even miss, but just pretend that these things aren't as big of a deal as they are. And that's really where we can find, like you said, you're jumping off or you're biting off more you can chew now from an interest rate perspective, maybe from a tech perspective. But these are just 4 or 5 things that we quickly ripped off in 10, 15 minutes. And we barely scratched the surface on that, let alone, some of the other things. And it's just to say, really do your homework in thinking about something like this. Consult certainly your trusted advisors, whether it's us at Kaizen, and if you want to have us take a look at your numbers to see, what from an accountant's perspective, is this the right time for me to be doing this? We could help you with that, but there's a lot more than just the accountant's perspective that goes into this decision. And I think, you all as the business owners, gun to your head, maybe that's not the best analogy, but when that time is, and if you have to be honest with yourself first if this is the right thing to do. So, that being said, we talked about a lot today so far, kind of hit a bunch of moving targets here, but what are your final thoughts, Eric, in trying to wrap this one up and bring it home?
Yeah. I think we should just part maybe on some, so what should we do to be ready? What are the things that you might want to prep for before you take that leap? In assuming you can't execute some of these things, that might also answer your question, am I ready? So first thing, documentation. Are my SOPs documented? Do I have an employee handbook? Are all things repeatable, trainable, scalable? This is down to doing estimates, handling customer service. Well, do I have core values? Do I have a vision statement?
You take a week off of your business and have nobody miss you.
Exactly. Do I have future leaders, right? Can I go leave that location and not show up for a month and it's still okay? And if I haven't, maybe I have that person and I just need to prepare them. Give them the ramp to be prepared. Don't drop this on their lap. Don't say, hey, you get to learn to be a leader on the fly. Not a great practice. Time to rein in the books. The books aren't clean. You're adding a second location. Now you're going to have two sets of books that aren't clean, especially if we're going to do something like class-based accounting, meaning we have one set of books with multiple locations. Fantastic way to analyze a multi-location business. When the data's crap, the results are crap, and we can't really do much with it. Do we have that financial buffer, right? We talked about needing a certain amount of working capital available. You have to forecast what would that cost, right? What is all the cash requirements that I'm going to need for this deal, including working capital. Make sure you have all that in reserves. Put that in a high yield savings account at minimum, if not some type of market based account. Don't let that money degrade in value by letting it sit in a bank account. And then look at the market, right? It's let's not make gut feel decisions. Maybe have that in advance. Make a market plan. ChatGPT is a great resource now to do a market feasibility study. You can go in there, describe in detail exactly what you're looking at to do. Use the deep research function. It will do some really interesting things to maybe help sway your decision making, not just things that you're thinking about off gut feel or somebody else that's telling you. I think if you do those 5 things and you find yourself either I did all these with flying colors. This is already in place. I feel good. Hey, you probably are ready. If you tried to execute those 5 things and it not going so well, maybe time to step back, really focus on getting your reins down on shop 1 before you make that leap to shop 2.
I think that's very well said. I think at the end of the day, it's real easy as a shop owner to maybe not want to hit the brakes on something like that. And, I want to contribute to the market. I want to contribute. My business is growing. It almost feels like you're doing something wrong by saying, you know what, I'm actually going to pass on this acquisition sometimes. And I think more often than not, and we never hear those stories. We never hear the victory stories of all the businesses that went unbought. But more often than not, sometimes not buying that business, or at least waiting and making sure these things are in place, waiting to make sure that the market is where it needs to be, waiting to make sure all of your processes and your leadership is where it needs to be. That might be what saves your business in general, because you never know when that second acquisition could take down everything, and that's what nobody wants to do. So I think that's what I kind of mean by there's like the unsung hero in this conversation is all the shops that went unbought, and it's not to say don't do this, but it's just to say there's a lot to think about. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I think I'm still not ready. It's going to make sense to pause and wait, because you can always, live to fight another day when you have that mentality. But, at the same time, you want to keep moving and keep growing, because what isn't growing is dying. So, it's this this business problem I think we have regardless of the industry. So, that being said, thanks for sticking through it on today's episode of the Money Shift podcast. We really appreciate you listening. If you have a business owner, if you know another business owner rather that, would benefit from this, or is maybe thinking about opening a second location, have them give this episode a listen. Have them reach out to us at Kaizen. We're always happy, like I mentioned, to take a look at your numbers, to see if this is something that maybe would make sense for you. Again, no obligation to work with us, mostly just in a giving back to the industry and wanting to help shops in the industry grow. So, shoot us a note on kaizencpas.com. And like I said, if there's anything that you think anybody you think would benefit from this, do me a favor and send this their way. We really are looking forward to having the next conversation. And in the meantime, we'll thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the Money Shift Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and share with someone who needs a little shift in their financial life. See you on the next stretch of the road.